I think starting with human nature and the human mind and what it is that people really connect to, wanting to be recognized, wanting to feel like the future can be better than the present, having a lot of fear and anxiety. 1/4 of the country is afraid that their current financial situation can land them in homelessness. I mean, that's the customers we serve.
All right, guys, bang, bang. I've got Noah here with me. Noah, I thought a great place to start this conversation is most people have heard of Acorns, but they probably don't quite yet understand the product that you all have built, who you're serving, and then also a lot of the trends. And the world has changed so much in the last 5 years in terms of both the economy and society. So maybe you could just start with, somebody who didn't come from the finance world or the tech world. Why did you start this? And maybe walk us through kind of the evolution of the product.
Yeah. It's nice to be here, by the way. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, one of the things, it's a funny, the phrase fintech kind of annoys me because it implies a type of company, a type of thinking that is not the way we approach the problems that we're confronted by. I think one thing that people don't tend to know about Acorns, I think they think we're very young and that we serve, students, young people, 18 to 25 or whatever. Actually, Acorns fundamentally is for everyday people, and our customers run the gamut from 98 years old to birth, because we're also helping parents, set their kids up. And we really serve that everyday person and family, and it's not geographically specific or anything like that. It's really the American middle class. So that's the core of it. In fact, people like our customer base, there's a large percentage of our customer base that's over 60, and it's something I'm super proud of because it means Acorns is resonating across generations, which was part of our goal. And from the perspective of fintech versus what we really are, we think of ourselves as a consumer brand and a consumer company. That's not to say, obviously, we are in the category of fin, and we're a tech company because we build technology, of course. But first and foremost, it's about the consumer we serve, how they think, what they feel. We just put out a survey called the Money Matters Report that we put out every year to understand consumer psychology, consumer emotions, what's on their minds, what are their anxieties, their fears, their hopes. That's really how we start. And I would say, I don't want to co-opt the conversation because, obviously, and let's keep it super interactive, but like the way we think about building the Acorns brand in the 21st century, zooming out, like what is it that resonates with people today and connects with people emotionally? Wow, there's a deer walking across my property right now. That's funny. And zooming out, we have this kind of 21st century brand framework called Heart and Desire. And that means, conscientiousness, purpose, these kinds of things today should always be, but today they're hugely important, particularly for young generations. Is it a conscientious company that's doing the right thing? And then desire is born out of kind of the mainstream movement of design becoming more central to products. Obviously, design has been central to products in subcategories like fashion and things like that. But with Steve Jobs and Apple, this became more center stage generally. So desire is, are you building a product that's designed in a magnetic way that connects with people emotionally and that kind of thing? And at least when I think those are the two poles of brands for the 21st century. And I would say Tesla is probably the product and brand that has nailed it right in the center the best. It's got a clear purpose, creating a sustainable future, and it's got great design. It's inarguable that the cars are designed incredibly well. The software, the car itself, all of the things that go into it, and I think they sit right at the center of that. So that's how we think and approach problems, the consumer in the category.
When you think of this kind of design component, do you do anything different in terms of coming up with the design, either sequentially, kind of in the product building process, or are there certain things that you've learned over time as inputs to this design that you think is such a big differentiator for you all?
Yeah, starting with human nature. It's not necessarily about the process or the product development framework. It's starting with, what do people feel? What are they feeling right now? What are their anxieties, fears, hopes, all, that. And then how do we create experiences in the product that confront those problems? We focus a lot. The Acorns brand is all about hope. based on the idea of tiny acorns growing into mighty oaks, that is the story arc essentially of hope. And so giving people a sense that there's a better future ahead if they take these actions today and stick with them. We have a screen in the product called the potential screen. We purposely did not call it compounding or some sort of financial jargon. We called it potential because this is all about what your potential can be and how your future can change over the next 40 years if you do these things. So that's that. I think starting with human nature and the human mind and what it is that people really connect to, wanting to be recognized, wanting to feel like the future can be better than the present, having a lot of fear and anxiety. In this report I was mentioning before that we just put out, I mean, it was crazy to see that 1/4 of the country is afraid that their current financial situation can land them in homelessness. I mean, that's the customers we serve. So if you think about that fear, that anxiety, you have to start at that point when building products and experiences. Otherwise, you're just going to completely miss, kind of ships in the night experience.
So when people hear that number, kind of 1/4 of folks are worried about their financial position, potentially ending up in homelessness. I think there's a lot of people who would say, oh, come on. There's these young people, they don't really understand kind of what the financial world, there maybe is fear being driven by social media or problems in their local communities, et cetera. How do you think through, give the customers what they want versus the proverbial, if you would have asked people, what do you want? They would have said faster horses instead of a car, and kind of, trying to use data and analytics and the brain power that you all have been able to accumulate there in terms of, high quality employees, et cetera. Like, is there a balance when building the product of trying to figure out, what the customers are demanding and then also what you all think maybe they would want, but don't yet know?
Yeah. I mean, I always start with instinct first. It's an interesting thing in this category. You often hear people talk about things like financial goals, budgets, planning. People don't really have financial goals. That's probably I don't know how that will be received as a statement, but actually when you do research, when you ask people what their financial goals are, and this is an interesting nuance to it, to not appear stupid, people will say that they have financial goals, but the majority of people do not really have financial goals. They may say, I'd like to not retire poor or some sort of broad strokes thing, or I'd like to take a trip with my family, XYZ. But the concept of financial goal, so people don't really know what they want. And I'm very much in the camp of helping people figure out what they need. And I think that's a big difference between what I see with a lot of people in the technology world. And I think people who try to create things that are leading people down a particular path. And in our world, we say that we're trying to put the responsible tools of wealth making in everyone's hands. If we're just responding to what people want, we're going to offer trading, we're going to offer crypto trading, we're going to offer credit card, we're going to offer all these things. But if we focus on guiding people to what they need, and frankly, guiding people down a path of how wealthy people really make money, then we're going to put different products into the market. And those are the types of products that we focus on putting into the market. As an example, all of our portfolios are diversified portfolios, right? You can add some stocks to it. You can add a little bit of exposure to Bitcoin, but it's created in a way where we're still going to make sure that you're maintaining diversification. And that's really fundamental to our product and product experience. And I think that gets to leading rather than following, and by the way, that's not to say that we don't listen, because we listen very intently, but we're not building our company based on what focus groups tell us to do.
When you think of design, obviously that's a big part of this, but also you mentioned brand, and brand and design sometimes are very closely kind of overlapped. Other times they can be very different things. And so talk about the brand and how much of that comes from the product and the design versus maybe there's other things, the way you've designed, the company, or some of the actions you all have taken that really drive that brand.
Yeah, I think of a brand as an amalgam of all the things: the culture, the product, the marketing, the service. It all comes together into what you would say is a brand. And a brand is how people feel about you, fundamentally, right? So all those things are going to be inputs into how people ultimately end up feeling about us. And I think if you do a good job of creating a brand with a very clear ethos that stands for an idea, then you have to recognize that every single thing you say, every single thing you do, the way you treat your people, the way that your culture is versus the way that your product is, the values that you have inside of your company, and how those map to the values of your product, all of those things have to be synergistic in order to have a singular brand. And that gets into like how you structure the company organizationally as well. And we have at Acorns, we have brought all of our creative groups, advertising, creative, brand design, product design, education, content, all of these groups into one organization, rolling up into the executive creative director that reports directly to me. And that's because of a recognition that brand is all of these things.
When you start to think about kind of that end user, right? There is, I got to get started, in the journey, and maybe I have no investments. I need to start to get some investments. There is the buying of assets, the holding of assets, getting educated on those assets. But then there's also the participation. I think I've heard you refer to it as like kind of the participation in capitalism. There's shareholder voting and all of this stuff. You're unique in that you built Acorns and had a lot of success there. You also built a shareholder voting platform called Say. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, the buying and holding of assets and even potentially the selling, kind of the financial actions versus, the exercise of voice in financial markets today.
Yeah. We built Say as in a response to two things. I mean, first, it was born out of irritation. And I think a lot of good companies or ideas are born out of irritation and frustration for how things exist. And the reality for us early on was we were bringing new investors into investing, everyday people who had not participated in the system that way. And we wanted to be able to introduce them to the idea that they can vote their shares. And this is not like a well-known thing, particularly for people who are new to it, but it is an empowering thing. Investing is very empowering. And so is being able to vote your shares. And those two things sort of go hand in hand. Like the idea that you are an investor, it means that you're participating in the system to be able to create wealth that you might not have otherwise been able to create. And it also means that you get to exercise your vote and your voice. And we felt like those two things go really hand in hand. So that was part of it. And the other part was we're a very design-oriented company, as I was talking about before with the desire point. And with the existing company that was sending our proxy communications, we just couldn't get an email that worked, that looked like an Acorns email. So that was a real point of frustration. So it was like very tactical that way. We wanted to send well-designed emails. And then it was conceptual in that we wanted to give our customers and give investors on the whole, the chance to, who had not understood and did not understand that this is a part of investing, give them a chance to exercise their rights as shareholders and participate in capitalism. And I think the more you participate, the more knowledgeable you are, the more you understand this stuff. There's a kind of back and forth dynamic there. The better an investor you will be, the better you'll be at using your voice, the better an investor you'll be. And it sort of feeds on itself that way.
Now, what's interesting about this is the kind of fintech, consumer facing market. People love some of the brands because of they're giving them access and pioneering a lot of different kind of products and features. And then some are hated because they've taken actions that may be kind of opposed to the users at certain times, whether they needed to or not, just the perception of that. And here you're talking about even creating a second company or a product to be able to serve the user, et cetera. How do you think about the relationship between maybe like doing the right thing or integrity with profit? And, obviously, I think most people, when asked, they be like, well, obviously, we do things with integrity. But I mean, in terms of, giving up profit in order to do the right thing and thinking through being a business, but also serving your users. And so what is the relationship there and how have you guys handled that over the years? Today's episode is brought to you by Propy. Imagine a world where you could buy and sell your home, wallet to wallet. With PropyKeys, you can mint your home address and upgrade it to a real-world asset. This not only protects your home's title from fraud, but when you are ready to move, you can sell it through an NFT auction as well as through the traditional way. There's optionality here. PropyKeys is part of the Propy ecosystem. Their mission is to make home ownership more efficient, affordable, and user-friendly. PropyKeys is a fun entry point to placing title on the blockchain. Now, anyone can start their on-chain journey by minting home addresses via PropyKeys and staking them for profit until they are ready to sell their home. Visit PropyKeys.com to learn more. Again, that's PropyKeys.com to learn more.
Yeah, I do not think most people focus on integrity in their businesses. And I think that applies broadly to this category as well. I mean, integrity is not obviously a buzzword. It's like, is that part of the fabric of how you make decisions, all the way through to, is that your business model? Is your business model predicated on a relationship that comes back to doing the right thing for the customer? And in financial services, particularly if you're talking about, this is just my view, obviously, but particularly if you're talking about everyday consumers, the question is, what are the behaviors that people should be engaging in? What are the behaviors that are healthy for people, that create a better life for themselves? How do you make sure the people who are not necessarily informed about all this stuff, which frankly nobody is about all this stuff, how do you make sure people are informed before they're making decisions? And generally speaking, what are the challenges in culture today in money? Obviously, borrowing can be a hugely problematic thing. You know, sometimes we all need to borrow money to accomplish things, but it can be problematic, particularly if the customer doesn't understand the rate at which they're borrowing and the kind of instrument. And this happens a lot to a lot of us, probably all of us at one point or another. Trading, you know, I'm a big believer in the idea that everybody has, desires to take some risks, to play some bets, all that kind of stuff. But the question is, how much of your money are you trading with? And do you know how much is a good level to be trading with? And I think it's challenging if the core business model is predicated on earning money from these types of behaviors, including spending. I mean, spending is a massive culprit. I don't need to tell you, in terms of challenges in consumer relationship to money. So when you think about that from the perspective of integrity in the business, if the primary business model has an inverse relationship to the health of the consumer, whatever happens in the end, the business is going to be trying to drive the core business model to an outcome that drives revenue as high as possible, particularly for venture-funded, venture-backed companies, because you have to grow. So then the question is, if your incentive is to drive growth in this area that is misaligned to what's right for the consumer, how do you build a company with integrity? And I'm not saying there aren't various business models in the category, but we chose subscription pricing for a couple reasons. But one, because it's very simple, and from the perspective of our goal, which is to get people to save and invest as much as they can, it's not connected to the behaviors that we think get people into trouble. Now, you could debate me and say, well, we have a tier that's $9 a month. That's kind of expensive. That might be that, and we can have that debate, but it's $9 a month. We try to be clear about it. We try to give you a lot of value in exchange for it. And ultimately, our goal is, again, get you to save and invest as much as possible. So I think from the perspective of building a company rooted in integrity, if you're going to throw out the word integrity has to be applied to every single thing you do, down to your business model, and whether it incentivizes the people in your company to do the right thing in the process of building the business. And then, of course, and again, I don't mean to take up too much oxygen with this, but then bring that to how you communicate. Does how you communicate truly align to what it is you're doing and what is right for the customer? Are you being honest in your communication, or are you saying things that seem interesting or magnetic, like they're going to capture people's attention, but it's misleading fundamentally? And I think you have to bring all those things together and be super and bring integrity into every decision that you make in the business, and create a culture that embraces integrity and understands that integrity is the thing that's respected.
So what's interesting about this is you spend a lot of time on like how to build a company, how to build a culture, how to build a team. What there, given when you started Acorns, it wasn't your first company. What have you done differently? Or like, what are maybe the takeaways where like, when I start my next company, if I ever do that, here are the like non-negotiables or the things that I've learned are, essential to building something that's successful?
Yeah. I'm not sure this is the first point, but it's the first point that comes to my mind. And that's, when you establish the values of your company, do those values align to your values, like truly? Because if they're not authentically connected to the person building the company, and frankly, the people that you choose to lead in the company, if there's misalignment there, you're going to immediately start having fractures in the culture, because the culture is the feeling of the culture is a manifestation of the values you set in place and how authentically you're upholding those values. So I would start with, and I'll tell you our values. And so first is lead with heart. Second, make bold decisions. Third, always build trust. 4, never stop growing. And 5, find a way. And I really, if I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I don't embody those things, and I'm talking to the company and I'm making decisions about our product and our brand and this, that, and the other, like, people aren't going to believe it, and you're not going to feel like a singular culture. So I think that's part of it, and I also think you have to take your values to an almost religious level. And by that, I mean, you have to decide that you're going to fire people who are not upholding your values. That's like the most, that's taking your values to real actualization. And that's something I've had to, because that's something I've had to get better at. But I think now we've gotten religious about that. And I think that's really fundamental to say, like, are you going to take it all the way to the line?
Got it. And then what about like on the product side, right? In terms of serving these customers, what surprised you the most as you've kind of built for what I'll call like the everyday American, right? And really kind of sitting at the intersection of giving them access and participation in financial markets.
I would say because like what surprised me in a positive way is that we have introduced people to a complicated topic and a complicated industry. And it's easy to imagine that during down times and really kind of difficult market conditions that people would run. And people have actually done the opposite. People have stayed, customers have stayed. And that has surprised me in a very encouraging way. When I think about the surround sound anxiety that confronts people every day from the news, from their friends, from social media, from all these different sources, like, it's really easy to come to the conclusion that you should give up, and that, it's a really bloody time. And especially as we're going through the pandemic with all these spikes and dips and, all this turmoil. So I think that's a really positive, surprising realization and an outcome. And, people have asked us that a lot along the way, like, what's going to happen when there's difficult times, especially because you're talking about people who A, might not have a lot of money, and B, might not be used to confronting these kinds of anxieties and this kind of panic. And, I think that's probably the result of a bunch of things, but I like that people are, that our customers are focused on timing the market, not timing the market.
Along those lines, there's what I'll call, kind of good investment practices or behavior, but there's also a large variety of assets they could buy. When I think of Acorns, whether correctly or not, I don't think about people like YOLOing into, your long tail of crypto assets. But what are some of the trends? Where are people investing their money? Is it more kind of digitally native type opportunities than say just the S&P, or what do you all see the actual consumers doing?
Yeah. I was, we spent a lot of time talking about how we get into crypto, because in our world, the question ultimately is, how do we make this boring but not too boring? because we want people to passively invest, we want people to be diversified, but we also want to meet people where they are and provide opportunities that people are interested in, allow people to invest in their passions. So ultimately, the way we approached the Bitcoin question or the crypto question was, we said, let's start with an education campaign, and that's called Bits of Bitcoin. And that means, like, you should think about this as the sprinkles on top, so that was how we launched our foray into Bitcoin. And the way the product works around that is you can get exposure of 1 to 5%. If you're in conservative, you'll get 1%. And if you're all the way, up to aggressive, you can get 5% exposure. And that's a consumer choice. What we've seen, which is really, I think is really cool, is that those customers that are choosing the portfolios that have some customization but are still well diversified, that connect to their passions, they're actually stickier. And you probably assume that, but we've seen that play out in the data. And I think that's great, because if I can get you 2% exposure to Bitcoin in a portfolio that's 98% diversified, and you're going to stick with investing for a much longer time because you're supporting something you're passionate about, but also you're doing the right thing, like that's a fantastic outcome. So that's how we're thinking about it. That's how we're building out the portfolio, let's call it portfolio selection process. We want to make sure you're well diversified. We want to make sure you can participate in some of your passions. And in the end, we want to make sure you're growing your money over time and benefiting from compounding as much as possible. That's really the way we approach it.
And then a lot of times you can learn not only by who you're building the product for, but maybe like the customers, if you could, you would turn them away. And I think a lot about like, you learn about what you are doing by understanding intimately what you're not doing, who you're not building for, et cetera. And it's like, who falls in that like anti-customer bucket?
Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Consensus 2024 by CoinDesk. On May 29th through the 31st, I'll be heading to Austin, Texas to speak at Consensus, the world's most established global event for all things crypto, blockchain, and Web3. I'll be sharing my thoughts on what the next bull run will look like, how it will differ from previous run-ups, and the broad macro investment thesis for Bitcoin and crypto more broadly. That's not all. Consensus has tailored programming for Bitcoin maxis and multi-chain mavericks alike, covering everything from post-halving strategies to mining and more. Plus, get ready for the epic showdown, Bitcoin versus Ethereum at Karate Combat. That's just a taste of what's to come at crypto's only big tent event. Join me in Austin alongside 15,000 other investors, founders, brands, and more to take in all that blockchain has to offer. Get your pass today by clicking the link in the description and using code POMP to save 20%. Again, click on the link in the description and use code POMP if you want to save 20%, and I'll see all of you at Consensus 2024.
Yeah. By the way, I love this question and this area, to talk about the customer that we're not building for is the active the super active customer. The customer that we are building for is the customer that wants to fundamentally offload the management of their money and feels that that Acorns is a company that will handle it ethically, that will put them in the right products, and that will help them. That said, there is a degree of active, like we are inviting customers, as I was saying, to participate and custom build their portfolios while still maintaining diversification. But I think you have to be extremely clear about who your customer is and who your customer is not. And then one of the things I love about Acorns, back to the integrity question, is you can tell as much about Acorns from what we do offer in the product as you can from what we don't offer. And there's a lot of products we do not, we just do not offer. And I think this comes back to the customer that we're serving, where they're at, what's important to them, what we believe is going to be most helpful for them, and how to guide them to the best outcome, financially. And sometimes it's customers get frustrated with us because they might say, you're too paternalistic. You don't offer enough freedom. Like, why can't I do whatever I want, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want with lots of products. But here, we're going to help you do what you should do.
And I guess like part of building this company is it does sit at the intersection of finance and tech. It does sit at the intersection of kind of brand and product and kind of design, but also in a weird way, education is kind of sewn through this whole thing. And it's a weird position because you don't want to tell people what to buy necessarily in terms of like, buy this stock, don't buy this stock, but they're going to hear that from somewhere, right? Like if they're on Twitter, they're going to hear somebody telling them about some stock or whatever. How do you think about education and like maybe information more generally as a way to give them the framework or the foundation, but stay away from suggesting individual stocks maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we have two approaches to education in the product, and this gets back to the whole conversation around integrity, starting from a fundamental belief that knowledge is power, and we should inform our customers as much as possible so they make the best decisions that they can. That said, we also create products that make decisions for people in different ways. So the way that we approach education in the product, we have a section called the Learn Hub. By the way, we've been doing this since the beginning, basically. And in the Learn Hub, you can find out you can go through every area of financial services and learn. Obviously, there's a focus on investing and learning as much as possible about everything from portfolio construction to the way markets move. And then our second strategy, which I think is probably more consequential, is educating at the moment of decision making. And that just means that throughout the product, we do educational interventions, let's say, at key moments of decision making. And that might be, if you're on the performance screen, we really want you to take a long-term view, but of course we're not going to restrict what you can see. So we have a 1-day view. If you're spending a lot of time on the 1-day view, we probably want to intervene and remind the customer to take a long-term view, because you might be getting caught up in kind of market panics or what's happening today, and that's not a good way to invest. And that goes all the way through to the deposit screen or the withdrawal screen. If you're withdrawing money, we want to make sure you understand the impacts of that. So educating at the moment of decision making is kind of our core product strategy, and that's based off of a fundamental educational insight, basically, which is that active learning is the most effective way to learn. And we have the chance to bridge products and education together in one place, and so we're gonna do that as much as we can. And I think if I were to say, like, the way that most companies approach education in financial services, and I can't say all, but I don't know many exceptions to this, it's a marketing strategy. I'm gonna serve you up content because I want you to do something in my product, versus I'm gonna serve you up content because I want you to be a really smart person with your money. And as a result of that action, I think you're going to be more loyal to us because we put your interest first.
And then maybe my last question for you is, finance is this very interesting market where if you can establish trust, you can do a lot of things with this relationship with a customer. Credit cards and other financial services and mortgages, and you can just go down the line of all these things that are involved in the lifetime of somebody who is 22 years old, leaving school, all the way up to they buy their first home, they get married, they have children, and kind of continue to make more and more money, and then they've got their retirement, et cetera. What is the aspiration or the ambition of the company? Like, do you want to touch all of these things? Do you have kind of a good understanding of maybe a smaller box where you're like, we just want to maniacally focus on this? Like, how do you think about maybe the future of what you're building?
Yeah, there's kind of two things in there. So our third value is always build trust, and say what you mean what you say, do what you say you're going to do. I think trust is the number one most important attribute, in any relationship, and we're in a relationship with our customers. So are we saying what we mean? Do we mean what we say? Are we doing what we say we're going to do? And, that has to be through and through in all of our decisions. And so trust is at the core, the most important thing from the perspective of where we're going. And obviously being able to take our customers down a path, we have to earn their trust. They have to respect us and our decisions. Where we're going is really simple. It's what we've been working toward since very, very early on. It's called a financial wellness system. And just to give context, to where we are today and where we've been, when you sign up for Acorns, the basic sign up process is that you start with an investing product. We obviously allow you to invest your spare change, or you could do $5 a day or whatever kind of recurring deposit that you want to make. And then, you've signed up in a few minutes and you're an investor. And then we introduce you sequentially to our product Acorns Later, which is a retirement account, or Acorns Early, which is a kids account, et cetera, et cetera. Emergency savings. We introduce you to these subsequent products. Financial wellness system is a totally different experience that signs the customer up from the beginning for every product as a system. In other words, I'm signing up for Acorns and I'm getting a system of products that we believe you need that the everyday person needs to effectively manage their money. And then as you add money, we allocate the money across the products for you. So it's really the idea of a money manager for everyday people. And when I think of the biggest opportunity in financial services outside of the family system, which I think is a priority for us, I think a money manager for everyday people is the biggest opportunity, because fundamentally, most people don't know the products they need. Like the vast majority of people don't know how to think about what amount of money should go where. And then in the experience, that people have with financial services generally. Most people have so much anxiety and so much uncertainty that, you know, they sort of fall off or drop out at one point or another. So I think bringing all these things together into one cohesive experience is a very exciting prospect. And the way we're thinking about it is that will live at our premium tier, and we'll be the first to offer a really compelling money manager for everyday people.
I love it. Where can we send people to find you on the internet or find out more about the company?
Acorns.com. I'm not really on the, I don't do a lot of, I don't really do much social media. So acorns.com, obviously you can go to check out all of the stuff about what we're doing, products we offer, and we're in all the app stores. So just search Acorns. And I would say also, we have a kids product called Go Henry by Acorns, GoHenry by Acorns. It was a deal, an acquisition we made of a wonderful company out of the UK called Go Henry, which creates products for kids to help kids with financial literacy. And it's in the United States now. And so you can start basically engaging with us as a 6-year-old, and start learning about how to think about money and getting that education you're not getting in school.
I love it. Go Henry. All right, Noah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll definitely do it again in the future.
Thanks, man. Good to see you.